Hey everyone, how's it going? Meister here, and welcome back to Moncton. Today's episode will feature parking lots, and more parking lots. Unfortunately, in present day, downtown Moncton is almost entirely comprised of parking lots. Almost 5,000 parking spaces, as a matter of fact, most of which are comprised of just flat, level parking lots. There's barely any parking garages in downtown Moncton. There's just a couple of small ones, and that's it. But like I explained in the last episode, this wasn't always the case. If we go back about 50 years or so in the 1970s, downtown Moncton was much more dense than it is now. Now, we can't say that Moncton has ever had what I would call a nice downtown. It's always been very industrialized. There was always warehouses and shops and all kinds of things right in the downtown core. So all of these industries have since moved out of the city. You know, they've set up shop elsewhere, leaving downtown pretty barren for a long time. And all of this vacant land was quickly rezoned into parking lots to serve all of the local businesses. And this is just another example of car prioritization in North American cities. This land could have been developed into so much better things than just boring old parking lots. I mean, take a look at satellite imagery of Houston and Toronto back in the 70s and 80s. A lot of these downtown cores were just ripped apart and replaced with parking spaces and car-centric infrastructure. And I know in Moncton's case, it was major industries that were moving out of the city, leaving just a bunch of empty land. But rather than expanding outwards into the suburbs, the inner city should have been redeveloped into, new residential areas or new businesses. Downtown could have been so much more than what it is today. But luckily, the city has recently revealed a 120-page downtown rejuvenation plan, which aims to replace all of this boring parking space with mixed-use development and open, walkable public spaces. And this is really exciting because it would give Moncton more of a European feel. It would dramatically increase the city's appearance for sure. It would draw a lot more people and businesses to the inner city, and it would make it more attractive to build some public transit in the city as well. With having a little bit more density, it would make it just a bit more feasible to build some new public transit options in the downtown area. And I really hope this comes into fruition in the future. But for now, in the game, I'm going to be building the city as is, and once we get into the fixing stage of town, I really want to reconstruct this urban redesign plan to the closest I can based on, what information is provided in this 120-page document. So I think it should be pretty interesting once we get to that stage. And plus, further down the road, there are more content creator packs or region packs that are going to be released for the game. More specifically, the US West and East packs. So I'm really excited to see what those look like, and I'm really hoping that there are some buildings that might be able to, fit in really nicely into the city, and maybe we might even go as far as redeveloping downtown again down the road to maybe fit some more appropriate buildings. But I don't know, that's just all under speculation for now. I don't really know what these packs look like or what buildings are going to be included or anything like that, so we'll just have to see. So the first portion of this episode is going to be in time-lapse mode as I develop. And one of the first things I'm going to do here is I'm going to redevelop some of the areas that we did in the first episode, because some of the zones that I laid down spawned some buildings that don't accurately represent what's in the city. So I'm going to go through these spots and manually plop down buildings that I think fit as, accurately as possible to what is there in real life. Now, recently in the game, we now have access to parking lot roads. This is a very welcome addition to the game. Super useful, really awesome for creating these, really realistic parking lots and whatnot. But unfortunately, there is one thing that is lacking from them, and that is paid parking. So I'm still going to be using mostly the just traditional parking lots that we've always had access to. There has been new traditional parking lots that have been added to the game too, in various sizes and configurations, so I'm going to be using them too. But the reason why I'm doing this is because I still want to simulate paid parking in the game. Now, in real life, most of the downtown parking spaces are owned by a private company, and I'm not really sure if there is some sort of agreement between this third party and the city to where the city might get some sort of cut from all the parking fees. I'm not really sure what goes on with that. But anyways, as long as we have some form of paid parking in downtown, that's really what I'm going for. However, I'm going to be laying down a lot of parking lot textures or pavement textures down in similar ways to how the parking lots are shaped in real life, because a lot of these parking lots kind of curve and conform to roads and, you know, historical street layouts, things like that. So just to add a little bit more realism and to make the city look that much more believable, I'm going to be just laying down some textures. You know, it doesn't really serve any purpose, it just looks cool. Because as I stated a bunch of times already, my goal is to simulate this city as close as I can, but I still want it to look the part. I still want the city to look believable and as accurate as I possibly can. So what I'm working on now in the game is a brand new residential development that is still technically under construction in downtown Moncton, but it's set to be complete within the next few months. This is the Three Sisters. It is 3 identical 15-story residential towers with commercial spaces on the first floors. The first 2 towers are complete. The third tower is ready to open probably in the first quarter of 2025 from what I gather. And these towers are pretty cool because it is the beginning of kind of like a renewal of the city's downtown. They look really great. And what's really exciting is this is not the only residential development project in downtown. There's actually a number of other residential towers that are set to break ground sometime in 2025. And all of these towers are going to be relatively the same height, between 10 and 15 floors, with a proposed 32-story building just outside of downtown. But you know, if more and more of these residential projects are going to be sprawling up in downtown, that's going to be really, really great for this whole downtown rejuvenation project. But until all of these buildings are built, we're just going to have to settle with this sea of parking lots that we're building here today. And what I'm doing now is I'm building one of the biggest parking lots in the city, used by a variety of different businesses, and so there's a lot of government buildings in downtown Moncton as well. You know, downtown is home to various government agencies, and a lot of them share all of these massive parking lots in downtown. And now guys, as the city transitions into autumn, I've hit a little bit of a wall. The city is at a standstill. We have zero demand in almost everything, and we need to figure out why that is. Well, we have a little bit of medium density that's sprawling up there, but nothing much. So let's open our city information view and let's take a look at what is going on. Now, it appears to be the same thing across the board. We don't have any residential demand as a result of having too high taxes and a lot of unoccupied buildings. So the taxes one is quite easy to fix. Let's just open our budget menu here and take a look if we can afford a tax cut. And it looks, I think we can. You know, we're making a pretty healthy amount of money. I don't know why these folks are complaining. You know, 11% tax isn't really that high, but it appears that 10% is the sweet spot where people stop complaining. So let's lower that down to 10%. And that is going to cost us a little bit of money, but we're still making, you know, a pretty healthy amount, I think. And in doing so, that should completely remove the tax complaints, which it does, so that's great. And it appears now we just have some unoccupied buildings in high density and low density. Unoccupied buildings just means that there are a number of buildings that have sprawled up in the city that don't have anyone living in them. So I'm not really finding any examples right now. But that could also mean that there are a number of vacant apartments in bigger apartment buildings. And until those are filled in, we're gonna get these factors that are negatively impacting demand. But ultimately, the biggest thing that impacts demand is your citizens' willingness to move into your city, right? You need to have some sort of attractiveness to your city that entices new people to move in. And if you don't have those, then you can have all the demand, but nobody's going to want to move in. So right now, if we check our happiness menu, you can see that there is a number of things to complain about. The biggest thing is being an unreliable mail service. That is so ironic because, Canada Post is probably not the most reliable mail service. But anyways, that can be quickly fixed in our city by placing our very first small post office. So I'm going to zoom in here on St. George Street, and looking at Google Maps, there appears to be a post office right here, almost at the corner of St. George and what should be Highfield Street. So there we go. What kind of upgrades can we do to this? Mail storage extension increases our capacity by 10,000. I think it's a fairly cheap upgrade. Let's go for it. And then that should fix our unreliable mail service debuff. But it's going to take time because we actually have to physically deliver mail to all of the residents. So that's going to take a little bit of time before this goes away. But in the meantime, we can wrap up some of the other major complaints. The next one being lack of entertainment. This is so ironic, guys. Welcome to Moncton. There's not always something going on in town. It is still a pretty sleepy city. But this can be quickly fixed by adding some more parks in town. And one thing that I've been wanting to do ever since I started the series is building this park over here, again on St. George. We have the Aberdeen Cultural Center, which is a big brown building with a park in front of it. And let's just see if there are any parks that we could maybe fit inside here. Oh my god, look at that. A beautiful city park fits perfectly in here. And let's see if there's any buildings that we could maybe put here that could... Oh yeah, we could build some apartments. I mean, the Aberdeen Cultural Center is not really comprised of apartment spaces. I think it's mostly offices and, I think there's maybe like a little museum or something inside of it. But in this case, just to keep up with the looks, I'm going to build this building here, which is apartments. And wow, this actually looks like the real thing. It's a big old brown building with a green roof. And of course, just like any other North American city, there is an abundance of parking spaces on the side of the building, just like that. So there we go. What else? There's a number of parks near downtown. We do, of course, have our little parkettes now available in the game. So maybe I can go here in front of Assumption Place and then plop a couple of little parkettes like this, Oh, wow. That actually blends in quite nicely with the rest of the park. So that should help us out in that area. Oh yeah, that's right. Skate park. So there is a fairly big skate park right along Assumption Boulevard. Actually, let me just open up my street view here. And yeah, so I think what appears to be this white blob here is the actual skate park. So let's just move it around a little bit. Put it a little bit more off to the side. And there we go. So this is actually pretty cool. This is a fairly busy skate park right in downtown. There's always people ripping on their BMXs and skateboards. in this downtown park. And just to add a little bit more realism to get it a little bit closer to real life, I'm going to remove my wide median here and give some street side parking to these folks. So there is street side parking along a stretch of Assumption Boulevard. So just going to go ahead and recreate that. And with these extra little parks that I've added, is that enough to completely get rid of our lack of entertainment? It looks like yes. It looks like we've totally got rid of that. Oh, and our unreliable mail service is slowly tricking down. So we're now at -6. We were at -7. And it looks like the next big thing is small homes, which I'm not really sure how to fix because I am zoning in fairly large lots, especially where all these single family homes are. So I guess I'll just ignore that for now, and as the city grows, hopefully that'll go away. But the next big thing after that is unreliable healthcare coverage. So yeah, I haven't really checked on how our healthcare system is doing since starting this city. So we have our one small medical clinic that is completely overrun at the moment. That is not what we want. But let's take a look here. It's probably time to add another clinic, but oh boys. Okay, so it looks like I'm not going to be building any major hospitals anytime soon, but perhaps we could build some smaller clinics until we have enough money to afford a big hospital. So I'm gonna have to make sure to be a bit stingy over the next little while in order to save up enough money to afford a big hospital. But I think we should be able to make do with just plop in a bunch of small clinics. And looking at Google Maps, there is a pharmacy just along St. George Street again over here that does have a medical clinic attached to it. So I'm not sure if this is a case in a lot of other parts of the world, but in Canada, there is a lot of pharmacies that have little medical clinics attached to them. So here we would have what would be a Shoppers Drug Mart pharmacy with a clinic attached. So for now, we're going to make do with these little clinics. This one has a capacity of 90 patients. And what's funny is it actually kind of resembles this building here. It's just a big cement brutalist block, basically. But yeah, we have a capacity of 90 patients. So that means a number of patients from this little clinic will be able to get transferred over, and then it should balance out. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that to make sure that we're keeping up with demand. But plopping this extra clinic should totally get rid of our unreliable healthcare system debuff, which it does. Just like that, it has totally disappeared, and our mail service is slowly trickling its way up to in the positives. And the last two here, we have poor garbage services. That's normal as we're exporting 100% of our garbage outside of the city. However, we are eventually going to want to build a landfill, as in real life. Okay, so it's out of bounds, but this field here, this structure that you're seeing, is the city's landfill. Now, I'm probably going to have to build it probably in this section over here, as this is outside of the city bounds. I have to keep everything within our buildable limit, but there's nothing going on here in real life, so we'll just scooch the landfill a little bit closer to town and build it over in this region. This is all industries. There are no residential areas anywhere near this area, so I think we can make do with that. But for now, I'm just going to keep exporting garbage until until I finish the downtown area at least. And then high noise pollution, that can be dealt with by just adding some trees to the sides of our streets. So maybe off camera, I can go and add some nice trees alongside a lot of our streets. But at least that clears up a lot of what was negatively affecting the city. And if we take a look, we have some residential demand now. So we no longer have any unoccupied buildings in both medium and low density. High density, we do have still some apartments, some vacancy, but we don't really need demand. Nor does Moncton have any high density residential in real life either. So at this point, I'm ready to just keep expanding, keeping up building some new residential zones as we go along here, and I'm just gonna, you know, quickly glance at Google Maps to make sure that I'm building houses where there are houses. So, you know, pretty much all along here as well. You know, it's kind of hard to see with the low resolution of this thing, but anyways, oh, this looks like it's a quite large apartment building. I really like these medium density UK buildings, as you know, I think there's a problem with them because they rarely grow, but when they do, they look quite appropriate just because they're not like super tall. But I guess in this case, maybe I could do, oh yeah, maybe there is something wrong with this medium density, because these duplexes here instantly spawned. Oh, wait a minute. Queen Street. No, that's Gordon. Oh, small issue here that I just noticed. Queen Street should go all the way to our main avenue here. Oh, but there is not an overpass. I don't know what's going on here. Let's fix that. There, so that'll add an intersection. There we go. And there is not a street light here. And just for the sake of realism, there is a little one-way like so, and there are no crosswalks there. That fixes us up quite nicely. So this is Von Harvey. And Queen Street is not actually Queen Street. This is Gordon Street. There. So as I go along in the city, guys, I'm gonna fix all the street names because they're pretty much all wrong. But that's okay. So look at that. We've added a whole bunch of residential zonage. And as you can see, as what normally happens is you get unoccupied buildings. All right, so we're gonna jump back into time-lapse mode for a few minutes here while I wait for the city to readjust itself. And while we're waiting, I'm gonna be building Riverfront Park. And this is a park that spans almost the entire northern portion of the Petitcodiac River. If we go back about 50 years or so, in the mid-60s, a causeway was built in the western part of the city, completely choking the river. Now, before this causeway was built, the river was much wider than it is today, and it has since shrunk a lot in width, leaving a lot of empty, marshy land to build on. And over the years, Riverfront Park was slowly developed over time. Eventually, these baseball fields were added in, as well as a nice trail system that spans almost the entire city. And these trails are one of the nicer parts of the city, because you can pretty much get from one end to the other on an e-bike, for example, or I mean, you can literally walk across the entire city using these trails, and they kind of spur off into a bunch of different directions. So you can get to a lot of places really easily using these trails. In fact, a lot of times you can actually get to and from downtown and the suburbs and various corners of the city a lot quicker on a bike than you can in a car, just because traffic is so horrible sometimes. Well, most of the time. But yeah, I mean, walking along Riverfront Park is quite nice. There's always some events going on in the summer. You know, there's some outdoor concerts and stuff that are hosted here, and it's pretty nice. Now, the only thing is, some of these areas in the park have kind of been overrun by homeless encampments and things like that. I mean, I'm sure there's no city in North America that's a stranger to that these days. So, I mean, hopefully something can be done eventually to, you know, fix this problem and to help these people out. But for now, I'm going to be building the park as is, and in the future, if you guys have any ideas or suggestions on improvements or fixes that I should make, let me know down in the comments, and feel free to leave me any comments at any point in this series for any suggestions or improvements that I should do anywheres in the city. I'll make note of your comments, and I will consider adding them once we get to the fixing stage, because you guys always come up with some pretty cool ideas on how to fix certain things in the game. So let her loose Let me know down in the comments what you think. And what I'm working on at this very moment is the parking lot for the Moncton Press Club. And there's also a section of this parking that's reserved for just general public parking, paid of course, which I'm not really accurately representing here, but it's fine. You know, sometimes on Sundays, I think the parking is free anyway, so we'll let it slide. Also in this region, right behind the press club, is a very iconic memorial in the city. Right here lies the RCMP Memorial, which was erected in 2016, honoring 3 fallen officers in an attack 2 years prior. Now, I would have really liked to recreate this monument in the game, but unfortunately, there's no small statues that would have accurately represented the monument. So what I've done instead is I've placed 3 stone columns to represent the 3 RCMP officers. And now we're going to move on to another section of Riverfront Park. This area is, I'd say, a bit more developed. There's a nice boardwalk following the shore of the river, and there's also an information center in this corner of the park as well, which I'm constructing right now. There's a little bit of public parking spaces here too. So this is going to be a little bit of a challenge here in this portion of the park, just because of the tight spaces that I'm having to deal with between this main road here and the edge of the water. You know, as close as this map is to the real thing, you know, the elevation is not quite 100% accurate, and, you know, maybe things are a little different than they are in real life, so it makes for a challenging build here in this space. So I'm gonna follow this up by doing a little bit of terraforming to just smooth things out and to make it just a bit more accurate. And basically I am doing this totally by feel and by memory, you know, because you can't really get down to the nitty-gritty on Google Maps. What does really help though is Moncton is actually in 3D on Google Maps. You know, it's a few years old now. I think the data dates from like 2021, so there's a few bits and pieces missing, but most of the important parts of the city are in 3D, which greatly helps in this build. Now what I'm going to begin constructing here at this very moment is called Bore View Park. It's named this because of the tidal bore that occurs twice a day along the Petitcodiac River. And essentially a tidal bore is a natural phenomenon that consists of a giant wave that gets pushed through the river twice a day. It can reach up to 1 meter high and can travel up to 13 kilometers an hour. I think that's about like 9 miles an hour or something. But anyways, this wave actually used to be a lot bigger prior to the causeway being constructed. It could reach up to 2 meters high back then, but again, the causeway just kind of screwed up the river, and now the tidal bores are down to 1 meter. But I mean, even with a 1 meter wave, you can imagine like a 3-foot wave just rushing through the entire length of this river. The river is healing though, as the causeway has since been deconstructed and a proper bridge has been built. So the river channel is in the process of healing and widening itself. And so the tidal bore is expected to slowly grow in size year over year. So potentially in another few years' time, we could see waves up to 2, maybe 3 meters in height. That would be pretty impressive. But anyways, one of the best spots to view this tidal bore coming through the city is at Boreview Park, as it consists of a nice viewing platform right on the edge of the water. And it's actually quite common to see people surfing the tidal bore down the river, which is equally as impressive as the bore itself. All right, so now let's move a little bit downstream to this little strip of land here. And this is going to be a little bit more challenging, because if I don't get everything perfect, we're going to have some trouble here fitting a few buildings. And as you can see, my roads don't line up quite perfectly. As I explained in the last episode, there was a little bit of a discrepancy in certain areas of the map, just because, yeah, I had to like reload the game in a few instances. So this road should probably be scooched over a bit more this way, but that's okay. We're going to try to make it work as is. And I'm going to go all the way to this area here, and I am going to attempt to plop down Chateau Moncton, which is actually one of the more recognizable buildings in the city. It is highly visible from, well, pretty much anywhere in the city, in the southern part of the city, looking towards the north, just because it's very red and very apparent. So I think I'm gonna have no choice but to reclaim a little bit of land here, but that's okay, because if you look on Google Maps, it appears that there is actually a bit of land that has been reclaimed. But actually, I'm gonna try something here. This might help us out a little bit. I think my roads are a little too elevated. So if I lower everything down nice and low like that, I think this is going to be a bit more appropriate. And this does look a bit more realistic, actually, because there's a bit of a hill driving into downtown from over in this direction. So with that, I can now go ahead and do a little bit of landscaping along the water here. And I think that should set us up quite nicely for what I'm about to do. There, yeah, and I'm gonna go ahead here and reclaim just a bit of land. Hopefully that is going to be enough to fit our hotel. And I have just the building picked out. The Gatehouse Residences. I hope I'm able to get this building to fit. So let's see. I'm gonna have to build out a bit of an extension off into this direction. And then, nope, it looks like it's still not gonna go. I'm gonna have to reclaim quite a bit more land. I might have to like kind of rearrange the river here a little bit. Here, if I reclaim all of this land, is this gonna ruin the river? I might just have to widen it a bit on the other end and just kind of modify it a little bit. I mean, even if it's not perfect, it's okay. And there we go. Actually, I think I can probably scooch everything over just a little bit, and then I can kind of smooth out the terrain. Now, unfortunately, I kind of wish this spire here was on this corner of the building, because then it would be like 100% accurate, but that's okay. It still looks fine just as is. What I'm gonna do now is, can I recolor this building? Is that a possibility? Uh-oh. So unfortunately, it looks like I might not be able to recolor this building. It appears the recolor mod might just work for zonable buildings, and this is a ploppable, so we might be SOL on that front. there. But anyways, let me re-smooth the river. Yeah, I think that looks okay, just to leave it like that. And just for aesthetics, I'm gonna go here and build a little roundabout. Actually, why not have a nice little tree? And again, I'm gonna have some more parking along the riverfront, just like so. And then let me just check my satellite views here. And there is a number of commercial businesses along the river in the back here, followed by a bunch of abandoned lots over in this space. So I'm just gonna smooth this out. Let's continue our path along the riverside, just like so. And right about, well, actually, oh my god, this is like impossible to see. Too much stuff going on, but I'm just gonna eyeball it. I think right about here is when our path actually turns into kind of like an elevated seawall section along the water like this. And then the path is kind of like very straight like this. Pretty much right up until here, where there is a pedestrian bridge going along here, but the pedestrian bridge is covered. There we go. Okay, let me just do a little bit of terrain conforming here. Let's delete this actually. Delete this. And then I'm gonna go ahead and flatten this out all nice and smooth. And I'm gonna set it up the exact same way on the other side. Just like that. And I think that's gonna make for a bit of a nicer bridge. Yeah, just like that. And there is no supports under this bridge. And it is kind of set up like an arch, just like this. And am I able... I don't know. No, this is not going to work. I was hoping that I was going to be able to change the color on the bridge, because the bridge is red. But it doesn't look like that's going to be a possibility, but that's okay. And then we can go ahead and just reconnect everything down below here. There, and then this path kind of continues on in this direction. Okay, and then over here we have a hotel, and then in between all of this we basically just have a bunch of empty lots. So I think what we could do here is maybe just have some gravel parking spaces as there is in real life. Beautiful in its own way. And then I know there's just a bunch of like shrubbery in behind here. Oh crap, I forgot to turn off anarchy here. Let's undo this mess. Turn off anarchy, and there we go. Let's have just a bunch of bushes kind of in behind here. And then there's a number of decently nice trees. And well, after all of these buildings have been developed, it looks like our gravel parking lots are getting quite a bit of usage. Now, these are not actually public parking spaces. I think they're just overflow for the hotel that should be here. This is not an electronics store in real life. It's a nice hotel. Now, the next step that I was going to do was develop this whole area here. You know, there's some fairly big grocery stores, and there's all kinds of businesses over in this corner. However, as you can see, I'm lacking commercial demand at the moment, and the only way we're going to get that up is if we continue to expand in the residential sector. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to start expanding outwards, and then I'm going to try to get some of that commercial demand to sprout up, and then we'll be able to move on to the next big things. However, before I do that, I just want to start working on this area here of downtown, the western section, as there's not a whole lot, well, I shouldn't say there's not a whole lot, but I mean, there's not a whole lot of commercial space. As you're going to see me do in just a moment here, we're going to be plopping down a railroad station. This is the city's railroad station. And there's a number of government buildings here, which would more align with an office kind of zoning. So let's work on that for the next little bit, and then we'll see how things go. And we might just have to get into those commercial areas a bit later on. So I'm going to pause the game, as I'm going to have to remove these segments of track. And I'm going to have to be mindful here of the terrain. So let me turn on my terrain, and then I'm gonna plop the most appropriate train station that I think fits the best. Moncton actually used to have a really beautiful historic train station, and I believe it burnt down kind of in the middle of the 20th century at some point. Not really sure on that, but it is very plausible. There, so that actually went a lot better than I expected. And now we just have to simply attach our tracks again. Now, I'm not going to set these tracks up 100% accurate. You know, as long as it somewhat resembles what is here in real life, that's all that really matters. So then this set of track is going to actually overpass this segment of road. So I am going to sink it. Oh, wow, this is a pretty long segment, but I think if I just sink it down far enough, I think that should be good, actually. There. And then let's hope that this actually builds an overpass. It doesn't look like it does, but it's okay. We can elevate this a tiny bit. And then, yep, that actually builds a bridge. I'm just going to enable anarchy, and then we'll fix our elevations in just a moment. Then I'll bring this back down. Connect all of this up. And I guess I'm just going to bring this segment of road down a little bit farther. Bring our bridge up a little bit. Oh, it doesn't look like our terrain is playing very nice over here. But honestly, you know what? It doesn't look too bad here. Even if I just bring this bridge down just a tad, and then my elevated section of road here down a bit more. You know what? That doesn't look half bad. I'm going to go ahead with that, and then let's just remove all these trees here that are in the way. There we go. I'll turn off anarchy, and then I'll just add all these bushes again here near the road, just like this. There, all right, there we go. So now let's take a look how accurate we've got this. You know, I think it's fairly accurate. Now the train station, I think, is a little bit more in this direction, and it's not quite as big as this. But it doesn't really get in the way of anything. The only thing it kind of obstructs is a pharmacy that is this white blob that you see in the middle of your screen. So what we'll do is I'm just going to kind of rejig my zoning. So there is nothing up against this main avenue here. Actually, what I'll do is flatten my terrain a little bit just to leave enough space for a footpath, because there is a footpath kind of going alongside Von Harvey. And then I'll just kind of smooth that out. It's a little messy, but that's all right, as long as we can fit this path here. All nice and dandy. There we go. Perfect. And then I don't know. Yeah, so there's a number of paths here. Anyway, I'll fix that in just a moment. But for now, as long as I'm able to build my pharmacy, there we go. So here, I think it's going to get a little complicated because there's a number of things within this block, including the Avenir Center. The Avenir Center is a 9,000-ish seat stadium in the middle of the city. It's relatively new. I think it was built in 2020. So how am I going to build this? I am not sure. I'm going to have to get creative. I'm going to have to go watch Imperator's video on how he made his baseball field, and I'm going to have to like make some sort of custom stadium. It's going to get pretty complicated. Maybe I'll save that for another episode, as you know, that entails a lot of work. But if we go over here on the other side of what should be named Main Street, I feel like it's the 8th time that I'm renaming this road, but that's okay. Let's rename that into Main Street, and then let's continue. Yeah, there appears to be a bit of an issue here. So this... Okay, so this is Bon Accord. Bon Accord Street, and then at the corner of Bon Accord, yeah, so this is the Times and Transcript. So this is not actually a police station. I just built this as it resembles the building in real life, but this is the local newspaper headquarters, or at least it used to be until it was moved elsewhere. So over here in this segment of Main Street is a bunch of businesses, and then there is a little business over on this corner, and it appears that... Oh, no, I got it wrong. Let me remove that. There is a few streets that I forgot to build. So we have Campbell Street. Oh god, you can't really tell. This is very difficult to tell, but I think it's kind of right in the middle of this block. We have a street running like this, and then another very narrow street running like this. Oh great, that didn't ruin my zones. So basically we have some commercial zonage here, and then we have a little business on the corner in the back, and the rest is, you guessed it, parking lots. Lots and lots of parking lots. So we have a modest parking lot over here. I guess I'll just plop a second one, and then in the middle here, I believe we can maybe fit a long parking lot, just like that. And then there's practically no lawn in between all of these parking lots. So I'm just gonna go ahead and fill this in. Actually, you know what? I think I can do with maybe another small parking lot here, because the businesses that are here are quite small. And actually, I'm gonna scooch this over. I'm gonna scooch it over a little bit more, just enough so I can fit another zone. There. Oh, a little bit more. I'm just trying to fit like a 3x3 in here. Okay, yep, there we go. Perfect. And then, like I said, there is no greenery in between all of these parking lots. So I'm just gonna fill this in just like that. And then once our buildings begin growing, then, you know, maybe we can reassess. But I think this looks fairly accurate. And we'll go ahead and remove all these trees here. There's pretty much no trees. So on this street corner here, I'm just gonna manually plop this building because it's one of the more recognizable buildings in the city, and that is the Crown Plaza Hotel. But first, let me take a quick gander if there's not any buildings that might be able to fit the bill. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. The Ember Suites. It's a little tall. Oh yeah, it is quite tall. It's about the same height as the Assumption building. But this hotel here is actually one of the more taller buildings in the city. But I don't think that there's anything that would really work in this case. All the buildings are pretty tall. So I'm going to have to go zonable. So let me just search through all of my buildings here to maybe check if something fits. Now, this is a commercial lot. Oh yeah, this might actually work. This pretty well resembles the actual building. Actually, if I put 2 of them, I think that would really sell this. Here, I'm gonna bring this one a bit more that way, and then bring it in like this. Oh, and actually, there's one inaccuracy that I built here. So in the back of this hotel is actually a parking garage. But I don't think there's really any parking garage that... Well, actually, yeah, there is. I think I'm gonna go ahead and remove this. And let's take a look here, because this parking lot fairly accurately represents what's there in real life. So I'm gonna go ahead with that. And then this is like all parking in the back. And then let's recolor this into white. Because this hotel is pretty much white with some red accents. And there we go. And then all along here, yep, we have some small shops. And there we go. So these buildings are probably most likely going to start complaining that there is not enough residences in the city, but that's okay. We'll just have to deal with that when the time comes. Now, along this road, let me just fix this. There is a little street jetting out like this, and that actually fixed my zoning as well. So we have some medium density that can be built here, as well as some small office spaces. And then in the back here, we have some more parking. So I basically just have Google Maps open in another tab, guys, on the side, and I'm just eyeballing this. Now this big old block here is home to, I would say, one of the biggest buildings in the city as far as footprint goes. It is a large government building. Now, it's not a commercial building, but I feel like this big old German department store fits the bill. It looks almost accurate. Not quite, but this government building is, it's kind of like a historical building that's in the city, and you know, it mostly closely resembles this. So I'm gonna go with this one, and we'll leave it at that. So then in the back here, again, we have a number of businesses that line the main roads. There is a ton of parking in behind this building, but there's also a street kind of going down the middle of this whole lot here, and it kind of blends in with a bunch of parking lots. Luckily, we have some parking lot roads now that allow me to do this. Now, in real life, in Moncton, there is a lot of residential buildings that have been converted into businesses. So you have like these nice Victorian homes that'll be home to various businesses, things like that. Now, just for the sake of looks, I'm going to be zoning a lot of these as residential instead of businesses. All right, so I'm gonna jump into one last time-lapse mode here, as upon further inspection, I wasn't really satisfied with the way this huge government building was looking like, and I felt that if I just take a little bit extra time, I can create something that is so much better than what I just had here. So using some of the French assets, I'm actually able to recreate a much more accurate representation of this building. So not only am I going to try to recreate the shape of this building as closely as possible, these French assets kind of resemble the face of the building, you know? So I really want to get that authentic look. I want a local to be able to zoom into this block and say, oh yeah, okay, I know exactly where this is. So, you know, with these French assets, I'm much more able to do so. And that's going to allow me a little bit more room to accurately rebuild this block as well, because the previous government building took up like two-thirds of the block. And, you know, the building isn't quite that huge in real life. So just by reconfiguring it a little bit, I'm able to get a much more accurate result. And then after building that out, I'm just going to follow that up by adding a couple of more residential buildings and some more commercial zoning for when we eventually start to get some commercial demand that's going to start sprawling up. And then I'm going to follow that up right before the conclusion of this video by adding just a couple little details here and there just to, make things resemble a bit more how they are in real life. And after that, we're going to wrap things up for this episode. And with that, I think that's just about going to do it for this episode, guys, as my demand has slowed down to a crawl, but what do I have to complain about? We pretty much completed the entire south side of downtown, and I think that is something to be proud of. I think the western side of downtown over here is probably going to take up most of an episode anyways, especially the Avenir Center. That's going to be a fantastic project. But we'll just have to get into that a bit later. So with that, guys, we have pretty much built most of downtown, and with that, we've improved a lot of what was causing our people to be unhappy. So we now have a very reliable mail service. Our medical health service is adequate. Now, it appears that our garbage is starting to become a problem, and as you can see here, there's a bunch of garbage piling up. So we're going to want to deal with that most likely next episode. So I'm going to take a portion of next episode, and we're going to make sure to add our landfill over in the west side of the city. So with that, guys, I thank you so much for watching. I really hope you appreciated this episode. I'm having a ton of fun building my hometown. This is turning out to be a really, really great project, and I can't wait to see how things are going to develop in the future. So stay tuned, everyone. There is a lot more of Moncton coming down the pipe. And if you want to check out some more exclusive Moncton-related posts, make sure to check out my Patreon. There's some pretty cool stuff on there. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, drop a like, leave a comment down below, let me know what you think, and certainly don't forget to subscribe to the channel. So that's it for me today. I thank you so much again for watching, guys. Take care. I'll catch you in the next one.